So I'd like to thank all of our speakers this evening. It's about 8:20. That gives us a good solid 40 minutes of discussion until 9 o'clock. We have a list of questions we've compiled from the cards that we've collected, and I think that we'll start with those. But at this point, can I please ask all of our panelists to join us up front here? Some of the questions may be applicable to maybe one of you, some to all of you. And as I read through some of these lists of questions, I'll try to make assumptions about which presenters might be the best to take the first stab, though of course you're all welcome to chime in. We need one more chair, but please, you're all welcome to, all the speakers are welcome to join us. All right, folks, if you want to take your seat, we're going to get started with the discussion portion of the evening. All right, folks, if you don't mind, we're going to get started. We've got a whole slew of questions here. Realistically, we're not going to be able to get through all of them, but I do want to try to get through the ones that have been asked several times, and then I also want to allow some period of time for, some verbal input from the crowd. So I think the first couple of questions really deal with local authority over the landfills and the activities there. As much as possible, if we can try to keep the answers succinct, that way we can hopefully get through a number of questions, but I understand that it's a complicated discussion. So the first question that was asked by several people, are 2023 and 2028 respectively, realistically, real stop dates for the two landfills? Can we, really expect closure, or what could we potentially expect beyond those two dates? And I think maybe Mark and Charlie and Steve might be the best folks to chime in here first, and then of course anyone else is welcome.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. I think to answer that, the best way is one politically and then one on a physical answer. Politically, obviously, it would have to be the will of the board from this point going forward as we get new members that we say, and administrative and legislatively, this is the end of the landfill. We all talked about what we need to do to prepare that in terms of money and in terms of diversion. But I think the other part of it is that's significant and it may be unique to Ontario County is that the current footprint is going to pretty much be self-limiting. From what the discussions that I've had over the years is that unless there's going to be a pretty good purchase to the south of land, that there's not any more land on the existing site. The last cell that we talked about that gives us the last 13 or 14 years is pretty much stays within the footprint of the landfill. So I guess from a physical point of view, unless there's going to be a pretty sizable purchase to the south side, then I think that would be self-limiting.
Steve, Mark, any perspective? I think you have to hit the button, maybe.
I would say in Seneca County, honestly, I don't think that Seneca Meadows has any desire to close in 2023. They moved to expand to the east side of 414. They applied for permits in the early 2000s and were denied. But it just shows that that's where they want to go. I think the fact that they want to start bringing in trash by rail also talks to the buildup of the infrastructure, and it speaks to growth. So, can we stop it? Yeah, the people of Seneca County, and primarily the people of the town of Seneca Falls. Certainly, it sounds like they have the capacity. It's really just a question of will.
I would just add that anything is possible. So it is a question of will, and I think people who live in these counties need to make their will known to their legislators so that we stick with the plan. Because I think both of these operators could very well come back and ask for more time, figure out a way to get more space in there. So we have to stay vigilant, that's all, and you have to keep sending the message that we've done our share.
And just the last thing is that Ontario County owns the permit. This is the permit is not owned by the vendor. So essentially the power lies in the permit, and that's where I think that we can have the most effect.
Gary, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you offered some recommendations, and I wonder if you have any brief response to the question. You'll have to hit that little red button.
Only that on the Seneca Meadows landfill, the host town can ban further expansions. The Ontario County landfill, if the host town has no, the rule in New York is if the host town does not regulate in a subject area, the county may. Otherwise, the county's home rule powers trump the county, or the town's home rule powers trump the county. So for the Ontario County landfill, the Ontario County could pass a local law banning expansions if the host town has no law regulating expansions.
Thanks. Anyone else on the panel like to comment?
I would just say for clarity that the town of Seneca, where the landfill is, has an agreement with the landfill operator, just like the county does. So both are tied in to this situation where we have to basically cooperate with the landfill operator until 2028.
So I think the next question I'd like to move on to is Casella and Ontario County have no financial incentive to reduce solid waste through composting or recycling. I said that as a statement, but there's really a question mark at the end. So how does the 10-year waste plan, I think we're talking about the Ontario County solid waste plan, address this conflict of interest?
What was that?
Casella and Ontario County have no financial incentive to reduce solid waste through composting and recycling. And I think essentially what that might mean is the more we recycle, the less revenue we generate through tip fees. So how does the 10-year solid waste plan address that conflict of interest?
Well, I think that Casella, if the county starts reducing its waste, they're going to get their waste from wherever they got to get it. So I don't think they're going to, and they operate a recycling operation up there now. I think as part of the county's work that we have to do, it's somebody in the planning office to look at recycling and reusing and reducing. And I think we need to get our economic development office going too, to bringing businesses in that can support this kind of diversion of waste. Now, Casella is going to work to get as much waste, whatever they're permitted to do, in there. And if we start reducing our waste, which is a minority of what they take in, it's not going to affect them. Do we have an interest in doing it? I think we do. I think that everybody, if we keep our eye on that, we've got to get to a place of reduced or zero waste when that landfill closes, or we're going to have to pay to send waste somewhere else. We do have an incentive, but again, it's a political question.
The next question actually is for Tompkins County, Barb and Kat. Does the 60% diversion rate, well actually it's for Onondaga, but I'll let you guys answer. Onondaga and Tompkins. Does the 60% diversion rate for Onondaga and Tompkins County include the trash you send to other counties? I can answer for Onondaga if you want to answer for Tompkins.
Go ahead.
So in Onondaga County we have flow control. So all of the waste that is generated in the county stays within the county, except for some industrial and commercial waste. That is essentially a product that can be sold as a commodity outside of the county. We do burn most of our waste that's not recycled or composted or C&D, and that ash currently goes to High Acres landfill in Penfield, and starting in 2015, actually, that ash will go to the Cortland County landfill through an intermunicipal agreement that the county has set up. Those two counties have set up. We will take their 25,000 tons of trash annually and burn it, and then they'll take our ash. We do count the volume of that ash in our diversion, not as a diversion, but as waste.
Right. Basically, what we need to do every year as part of our planning unit is a report to the DEC that takes into account all that we recycle and compost, which we consider recycling, and all that goes to other landfills. So the answer to the question is yes, that is all included in our percent diversion.
And another question for Tompkins County. How are Ithaca College and Cornell doing in terms of recycling and waste management?
Do you want me to take? Again, both Cornell and Ithaca College have very aggressive recycling programs. They're doing, I don't know what their statistics are right now, maybe Kat does, but they have all the ingredients in place, and we do see their recyclables that come to our recycling center. And as I mentioned earlier, they're considered commercial recycling, high fiber, and they do receive a revenue from us for bringing that material to our facility. Cornell has an active composting operation. Ithaca College has an active composting as well. Food scraps recycling, and that goes to Cuga Compost. And the Cornell is on site. And soon it will be going to an anaerobic digestion facility at the wastewater treatment plant.
Great. The next question deals with leachate. Leachate, and I'm going to use this term because the question asker did, leachate or garbage juice is a big concern. Since neither landfill is in the Seneca or Cuga Lake watershed, what harm do they do to the lake water quality? Who would like to jump on that one?
Well, first of all, they are in the FingerLakes watershed. So, well, they're in a watershed. They're in the Great Lakes watershed, okay? You know, as far as leachate goes, for years, Seneca Meadows would trickle it into the Seneca Falls waste sewer treatment plant. And to the tune where it would kill, or it would degrade the anaerobic activity, and then they would have to stop. The problem with putting leachate, I think, in any municipal water plant is that those water plants don't test for the constituents that are made up or are in the leachate. So it's just not a good practice. I don't think that that's currently happening anymore. They have put in place a purification facility at the landfill, and I think we're in a better place. But ultimately, what's going to happen with the leachate in the years to come is really the big question.
Some of the leachate from, I would just say, some of the leachate from the Ontario County landfill gets trucked to the Geneva wastewater treatment plant, which discharges into Seneca Lake. And then the rest of it, I believe, goes to Canandaigua's water treatment plant, which discharges into the Canandaigua outlet. And that goes eventually to Lake Ontario.
That's correct.
They all do.
Well, there are many components. There are many components of solid waste nowadays that are just as hazardous as hazardous waste, which goes to a hazardous waste landfill. There's only one hazardous waste landfill in the state of New York in Niagara County. And the leachate from those landfills carries those compounds to the wastewater treatment plant, and many of those compounds will pass right through the plant For example, PCBs can be found in landfills. Those are persistent organic toxins. They have extremely long lives, and they bioaccumulate as they go up the food chain. So they may be going into the wastewater treatment plant and passing through the wastewater treatment plant in concentrations that are far below a regulatory limit. But you're talking about thousands of gallons of this material, leachate, per week, going through the wastewater treatment plant and going into the lake. So over time, there's a large volume of that material, and there's a long list of such chemicals that can be found in leachate.
Thanks, Gary. I'd like to move on to another question. Excuse me. Is there a possibility that there will be an extension of the property protection plan to account for the reach of this? To account for the reach of the stench from the landfills, will it also extend to those whose properties stand to be affected by the plans to ship trash by rail?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Anyone like to offer
I don't think there's any plans for trash to be railed to Ontario County. And I don't think there's any support from Casella. They've basically said that they weren't going to accept trash if it was going to be railed in. They pretty much have made a statement in several of the committee meetings. I'm not sure, and I certainly support our neighbors to the east in fighting that fight in terms of have it railed in. I think it's a bad idea, and I think from a regional point of view, even though it's to the east of us, I look at it as a regional approach, and it certainly affects what we want to do here in terms of tourism and agriculture. It's not conducive for economic growth and just a whole lot of levels. As far as the property protection plan, when the county managed the landfill, we had I think a very generous and extensive property protection plan in terms of buying homes that were affected at assessment value. I think there's been cases where when the county owned it and people wanted to move out, if they couldn't get their dollar, then the county bought it. I think since we transitioned to Casella, I think the same property protection plan is in place. Does it extend in terms of people that are smelling it occasionally in the town of Geneva or even the city of Geneva? There was a time, I think, in probably the last year that it was very frequent. I'm optimistic that Casella has made every attempt to minimize that. God gave me a very large nose, and I don't smell it, and if I did, I definitely would tell them. I'm attuned to it. My phone would ring if I get those calls, but as far as, I don't think there's anything in the offering is for Casella to offer a smell protection plan.
Sure.
I'd just like to say something about odor from a landfill. Landfill gas came under regulation under the Clean Air Act about 15 years ago. And landfills generate hundreds of thousands of tons of landfill gas each year. About 50% of the gas is carbon dioxide. About 50% of the gas is methane. Both are odorless. Up to 1% is the regulated part of the gas, the non-methane organic compounds. Those are so toxic that Congress decided to regulate that under the Clean Air Act and require landfills to capture as much of the gas as possible. State-of-the-art technology captures about 75% of the gas and burn it at a temperature so high that it chemically destroys those toxics. So 25% of the gas escapes unregulated, uncontrolled. And that's the odorous part. So if you smell landfill gas, you're breathing toxics.
Thank you for leaving us on a happy note, Gary. I want to ask a question here for Epiphergy. What high-value products are you making for feeding people and to animals, and how are you doing it? Also, how are you finding markets for these products?
Good questions. So the how we do it part, I'm not going to go into too many specifics there, but I do want to say that it's an all-natural biological process that doesn't use any genetically modified organisms or hazardous chemicals or whatnot. This is the process that gives us compost and animal feed and biofuels back from food waste and organic waste materials is a very benign and naturally occurring process. How that's optimized and commercialized is a longer answer, but that's the short of it. What products are we making? We're producing high protein, high energy feed supplements that are targeted primarily for the dairy industry. In order to get optimum performance out of dairy cows, it's necessary to give them a bit more than just grass. Dairy science has evolved a lot over the past 30, 50 years. We're now getting much more productivity out of dairy cows than we were ever able to previously. Dairy is a very large part of upstate New York's agricultural base, and anything that we can do to produce high value, high energy, high protein supplements goes a long way there. So as far as the marketability and the market acceptance, it's been very positive. We have successfully demonstrated that we can take the post-consumer plate scrapings that people threw away last week and use them today to produce high quality, very nutritious feed supplements that are not only safe and healthful and nutritious for dairy cows, they also exceed all of the health and nutritional and labeling requirements for human food consumption as well. So yes, we have made food from garbage.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to move on to some of the questions. We categorized the questions as well into some of the options looking forward. And there's a few questions here that are asking a similar question just in different ways, so I'm going to try to rephrase it. Essentially, if Seneca County, if Ontario County, if the whole Finger Lakes region approaches zero waste in our communities, doesn't that actually incentivize Seneca Meadows, and maybe even Casella as an operator, though the community owns the landfill, just to import more waste? The problem doesn't essentially go away. The harder we try, the stick isn't really being waved over the communities where the trash is coming from. Any brave takers?
I think that's true, but there are incentives. I mean, let's face it too, it's not just a local problem. This is a state problem, this is a national problem. And the state is trying to get counties to pass these solid waste management plans. We're all supposed to be doing this. We're all supposed to be reducing waste. I think the state should go in there, it should go in and say there's a $10 state fee for every tip and a tipping for tipping at a landfill. I mean, there's a lot of things the state could do to help out, but our agreements end when they end, so they can make as much money as they can make till then. We've got to stop it at the end. We've got to come to an end. They'll still try to make money while they can, but we've got to get a plan and stay with the plan. So, I mean, that's my feeling about it. I think, though, but we need, the people of the earth need to come together on this.
You know, I would agree. I mean, just because we have landfills doesn't mean we should exempt ourselves from trying to reduce our own waste. And we can only hope that people follow the lead. Certainly, we have a big incentive when you're sitting right there next to a landfill. It should incent us to do it. But, you know, we were in a much better place. And like I said, in 1960, as individuals, we produced half of what we're producing today. And if you went back probably 40 years before that, it was probably less. You know, I mean, at one point in time, there weren't any landfills. I mean, people burned stuff in their backyard and had little composting. They didn't know they were composting, but they were just getting rid of their trash in their own yards. There weren't landfills. So it's something of the 20th and the 21st century. We invented them, and we can certainly get rid of them. I mean, it's not impossible.
Anybody else like to take a stab? All right, maybe this question might be good for Kat or Barb. Anyone, of course, can answer. But one question is, you know, can someone on the panel share examples of the type of markets for recycled materials or the type of materials that are made from recyclables?
Well, let me...
One more time. There you go.
Okay. One of the things that drives our program is the fact that we're not trying to market materials just as a local county. We're working with a company, whether it was the first company or the second or the third, that has other material recycling facilities nationally, that has agreements with end users. We have markets, you know, all in Canada as well as in different parts of the United States. Unfortunately, some of the material is still going to China as well. But we have the reliance of the fact that there's 1 million tons of materials that are being marketed by the company. And so it doesn't really ever turn into a situation that the economics don't work for us. Even in the poorest markets, the cost of recycling is still cheaper than the cost of disposal. As far as very specific information, I mean, we do have a list of the places that it goes to. Kat, did you want to talk about that, or?
Just to clarify, was the question specifically looking at the types of materials, like the types of products that are made?
That was part of the question.
Content?
What happens to the materials once they're processed?
Yeah, like if you recycle a soda bottle, what might you see come out of the other end of that recycling process?
Sure. And it's good to remember, too, that just about anything is recyclable. You just have to have a system in which to collect it efficiently. You have to have a market for it. Somebody has to have demand for it. And you have to have an easy way to process it. So that's the great thing about technology, is as we're growing more and more items are becoming recyclable. Examples of things: paper goes back into paper, cardboard, newspaper, but also looking at things like the plastic decking, the lumber, right? That's made from often plastic bags. Soda bottles and things like that, rigid plastics, go back into the plastic lumber. And so there are more and more office supplies. You'll see like pens made from recycled content. So it's expanded beyond just your simple, straightforward, this is getting made back into paper, to all sorts of products that are out there.
There's clothing also that consists of recycled plastic bottles and things like that as well.
Yeah, there's actually a significant market for textiles. In fact, yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. You know, I want to leave.
If I might, let me just jump right in with one quick thought
sure.
there that I don't want to have missed, and that's that we talk about recycling beverage containers, food products, packaging, et cetera. But this bottle, when it gets recycled, is not going to be turned back into a plastic beverage bottle. It will most likely become a car bumper. And the reason is because the food and beverage industry doesn't trust the waste and recycling industry. So they won't produce packaging out of recycled and recovered materials. And that, more than anything else, is one of the biggest problems that we need to fix in recycling, is this idea that it's only good enough for food if we make it out of oil, and it's not good enough for food if we've made it from recycled plastics.
So in our remaining few minutes, I'd like to leave the panel, and if everyone has an answer, I'll just go down the line. So as a closing question suggested to me, how can citizens influence and leverage their legislatures to utilize their power to ban landfill expansions? And a related question, can agreements with companies like Casella be reverted? Can the county then take over not just the ownership that they already have, but also the operations of that landfill, and therefore kind of decide whose trash comes when and how often? So before anyone answers, I'll give you a minute to think. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'm going to answer a couple of questions here that I think I can fill a little space with. One was about incineration and the amount of volume or weight reduction. And I'm just a board member. I'm not an engineer, but I think the reduction of weight is a third. So when we incinerate our trash in Onondaga County, the weight is reduced by a third, and the volume is reduced down to 10% of the volume that it was. And the other question I think I lost here. So I think, oh yeah, how is recycling rate measured and calculated? It's really confusing, and it depends on the community. And actually, it can be really hard for communities to, say Walmart, as an example, or a grocery store, gets all of their materials in big cardboard boxes. Well, they recycle that cardboard, but it may never go to Tompkins Solid Waste or the MRF in Onondaga County, because they have a direct connection to a recycler themselves. So unless we call that grocery store or Walmart or Target or Kohl's or the pet store or the garage down the street that gets his stuff in cardboard boxes, we can't count that recycling. Or if we do call him and he never returns our call, or he doesn't know how to weigh or value or volume that, we can't count it. Some communities have the capacity, the time, the people, the resources to do that more than others. So I'm not saying that our recycling rates are suspect, but there's a lot of work that goes into that calculation, and some communities have more capacity to do that than others. And I think I've sparked some interest from Barb.
I can say that our recycling rate of our rate of 58% is on the low side, because we don't, even though we do try to get that information, we don't hear back from some of the companies that backhaul their material to other facilities. So that would be a low number.
Thanks.
And just one other thing, Chris mentioned that it's really confusing to compare county to county. The state is looking at moving more towards pounds per person generated per day to really even it out across the board too.
Yep.
Thanks. All right, so back to my closing question. If I had the Jeopardy dong, I would have played it instead of filling the time with my own answers. So this closing question, what can we really do? Folks have come here tonight, they're interested, they can call you, email you, express concern, but how can they really leverage their elected officials, governing bodies, to move in a way that the community might see fit with landfills? Mark, do you mind? And we'll follow down the line from you.
Well, just the way that you do it all the time. You call your legislators up, you vote for the people that say that they're concerned about the environment. You send them letters, you go to the meetings and stand up there and say what you want to say. And it works. I've been at county board meetings before I was on the county board, where the room was filled up with people, and I think people get the message after a while. So you have to use your citizen pressure, not just at the one time you vote every few years, and if you don't like what your legislator's doing, find somebody that's better and get behind them at the next election. And make sure that issue is talked about so people know what's going on, why this is happening. As far as taking over the operation for Ontario County, very difficult. It would be very difficult to do. I don't think it's a realistic aspiration. The agreement was signed. It was for 25 years. It's a pretty good for the operator agreement that says that we have to support them in their permits, requests, cooperate with them. From their point of view, they made a big investment. They wouldn't have done it on a 2-year lease, so I think we're stuck with them. If the only way out would be if they were to breach the agreement. It seems to me there's an argument that this odor is kind of a breach of agreement, but they're trying to address it. So I think I looked at this and would love to say let's get rid of Casella, but it would be very complicated. It would be very difficult, and I think it's at this point. Personally, my eye is on 2028. I think that's realistic, and that's not even for sure if we don't push for that.
Thanks.
Well, I couldn't answer it much differently than Mark answered it, but he's 100% right. I mean, if you want, it really is up to legislators, and you need to know where they stand, and you need to ask those questions very succinctly. You know, are you for the protection of the environment, or you don't care? It's really black and white. And make sure that those folks get put in office. I think we've seen a really good transition in the town of Waterloo this last election cycle. I mean, we had a town that was really kind of leaning towards sanctioning the clay mine or permitting the clay mine, which is part of the expansion of Seneca Meadows, and the new town board is not in favor of that. They've changed. And why is that? It's because the people made the change. That's what they want. And it goes right down the line. I mean, we're talking about landfills today, but I try to work hard to protect the region. It's the Finger Lakes that we need to think about. We have a very unique resource here that we should all be very proud of and very thankful that we have. I mean, water is going to be the gold of the future, and we sit on a tremendous amount of fresh water. And if we aren't careful, we can ruin it. I'm fighting with the people down in Watkins Glen to keep the LP gas storage out. I'm fighting on the north end to close the landfill. If people don't want me to do it, they vote me out. Then I got to make a decision. Do I want to stay here and live with those clowns or get out of town? But right now I'm staying and fighting.
Barb, any perspective on our closing question?
I don't think so.
Thanks. Gary? I think you just turned it off.
I agree with Steve. Mark's right.
All right, Charlie. Do you agree with Steve? Do you agree with Gary? Who agrees with Steve?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the past speakers for sure. And at the risk of pandering to this crowd, the vote for the expansion at the Ontario County landfill, it took place. And it happened. And there were a lot of people that didn't want it, and they came out. But as far as the contract that we have right now, Gary's the lawyer, but this was done many, many years ago. It's poorly written as far as the OML is concerned, to the point where it's based on financial incentives. There was nothing about performance, and no one thought about it at the time, years and years ago, about the performance. So how do we get the current vendor to do the right thing based on the permit and based on the fact that he's got to run a business and based on the fact that we also have environmental concerns? And again, at the risk of pandering, the board didn't do it. The Ontario County Board didn't do the things that have been in place. It was people here, it was people that showed up at the meetings, and that made, I feel, the current vendor a lot more compliant and a lot more vigilant in doing the right thing. So I guess I'm leaving it at a high note. Again, I think it's really up to the people and not necessarily the elected officials.
Thanks. Graham, anything to add?
I agree. I don't think that you can predict the vast number of things that can go wrong over a 30-year deal. Anyone who's married
Thank you, Graham.
But that aside, it's clearly a community issue. Over the next 14 years, however many that the Ontario County landfill will continue to operate before it's closed or it needs to be expanded again. I think that the towns and residents of Ontario County and of Seneca County and our other Finger Lakes communities need to decide what kind of community they live in. Do they live in a community where landfills and host benefit agreements are welcomed because of the trading off of financial benefits versus environmental and social consequences? Or do you live in a community that does not welcome a landfill and the town board has passed a resolution that says as much? It really, I think, boils down to that fundamental issue. And I live in East Bloomfield, so I would like to see East Bloomfield pass a resolution that there'll be no landfill. And it's just that simple.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
We would like to see that too, because the sense we have, and I'll tell you, Geneva, town of Seneca, downwind, downstream from the landfill, we get the sense that the West doesn't give a darn, and that we're in this, and the voting is usually this little group from the East, anti-landfill, and the West is fine because they're getting the money and they're not downwind. And we need the people in the West part of the county to get on the right page, because we're all going to pay for it eventually.
Yep, that's right. And if there are people in East Bloomfield that do want a landfill, I want to know who they are so I can work a little harder at trying to convince them it's not a good idea.
Kat, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would just continue to encourage that while you're looking at end-of-life disposal efforts, also looking at diversion programs and extended producer responsibility composting. Look for ways to avoid it in the first place so that you don't have that as you pair it with these concerns.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to thank our panel, Mark Venuti, Steve Churchill, Barb Eckstrom, Gary Abraham, Charlie Evangelista, Graham Fennie, and Kat McCarthy. It's kind of hard to go the whole way down the line, but give them a round of applause. Most importantly, I'd like to thank the audience for attending tonight. This was certainly a long but very important program. And I'd like to thank Hobart and William Smith, Ken Camera, and my colleagues at the Environmental Finance Center, as well as the Finger Lakes Institute for making this program happen. Thank you. Have a good night.